Andrew currently splits his time between Los Angeles and Istanbul, where he teaches at Koç University. He has previously lived in Houston, Cambridge, and Las Vegas. He has held fellowships from poets and writers in the Black Mountain Institute. His first book is A Turkish Dictionary from 1913 Press. Semming Circle, a chapbook of his translations of the Turkish poet Nurduran Duman, was published by Goodmorning Menagerie in 2016. His poems and translations can be found in Volt, Witness, Tammy Journal, Faultline, and Colorado Review, among others. He is the NOS Series editor at Les Figues Press and a founding editor of The Offending Adam.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Malvern for having us here. It's really, I've been wanting to visit this bookstore for a long time, and it's really wonderful to not only get to see it, but to be here. And thank you to John and Kelly and James for reading with me. The A Turkish Dictionary is, I guess at its simplest, me walking through Istanbul one day, and it ends up being a kind of compendium or a day book of my thoughts of the history of Istanbul, the language, the Turkish language, and kind of ruminations on faith and the self. Arabesque. To trace the zero, to trace from the cusp of the zero. A glass of raka, ice, a black cat blind. Mother's simple words, blind. In the space of the walk, laces interwoven through the cloth, a song, notes of a hat in the street, rain on the hat in the street, a long line of hats. You, if you were not asleep. I'm going to read a section from the end. The last section is titled "And Faith." And so basically at this point in the book, I have now turned back and I am walking back home. So it's my return and kind of what happens when I get back. I walk back, following the winding streets, back down the hill, back to the water, back across the bridge, back up to my hotel room where I lay myself down to rest. In the cool darkness of the room, I look at a map of the city to trace my meandering. Though I cannot say for certain which streets I followed, my finger traces one possible route through the city, then another, then faster through the city between the buildings, up and down the hills, past all the people, places, things. The possible routes infinite within this small square of space. My path, one possible arabesque through the city, and then another, and then. There's always a mistake. Even in the most intricately planned and designed mosque or palace, there's always a mistake. A part of the algorithm guiding the designer's hand is ignored momentarily, and the mosaic's pattern ceases to be infinite symmetry. One edge of the motif bleeds too far into the next, one color used for another. The mistakes could be the inevitable typo in the expansive, increasingly complicated mathematical designs stretching from floor to ceiling. Many believe, though, that the mistakes are purposeful. The designer's acknowledgement that only the one creator above can achieve perfection. That the reality of living in our world is inherent in perfection. That there is always a mistake here among us. That we always mistake. Though I can never be certain why these mistakes exist in general, or why a specific mistake appears in a particular design, I can choose to believe that it is only through the mediation of such drawings that one can begin to penetrate the language of geometric design. The language within the geometric design, the language within the failure, the language in the art, the language in the math, the language in the language, one and one makes. As I trace each potential route through the city, I find myself humming the theme to Steve Reich's piano phase. In the piece, two pianos play in tandem the same scale over and over and over again. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. At defined intervals, one piano speeds up momentarily to move one note ahead of its partner in the scale, then another, until finally the phase is complete, the two pianos are returned to unified play. Let me do the same thing this way, and now this way too, and this. The same thing again anew. Each thing each way until it fills me into the next. In another of Reich's compositions, Proverb, 5 choral singers repeat the same line over and over and over again, a line borrowed from Ludwig Wittgenstein. How small a thought it takes to fill a whole life. The song repeats itself, I am myself awake, listening, thinking, the thought that must. And on the other side of the window, the mosaic rose. I press the map against the window to trace the rose's form, letting its way guide my own way through the city. This is what I did, and this is what I will do, and this is my life, that my life, this. In Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, Wittgenstein uses the word life 10 times. 3.323. In the language of everyday life, it very often happens that the same word signifies in 2 different ways, and therefore belongs to 2 different symbols, or that 2 words, which signify in different ways, are apparently applied in the same way in the proposition. Tanishmak, to meet. When I looked up from the arabesque to the sun's stream spreading itself across the carpet where I kneeled, surrounding me, heat, grass, appropriating my limbs, the face appeared through the room, steady above me, gently approaching, a touch to my side. Bid me exit. Understand what is both in and around me, alone unseen, searching for the mistake that would complete the search. I held steady 2 inches away, the pattern consuming me, for 2 hours tracing the meander with the tip of my tongue, my finger, my eye the precision instrument, guided at last briefly, at last hidden behind the pillar. The air wavered into land and water, people building lives in the scrub. Sit over the water. 5.621. The world and life are one. Tanishmak, to meet. Breathe the world that comes together. Wind clears the smoke, and men pull up small fish in loaves of bread. How stone is rock, and fire, freedom matching the spread of people to stars, crafting mythos to understand the simple things. First feet used to shift the boat's balance, drifting among the boats. When the words to call are few and strict, language, a clock tweaked past spring, and 2 birds are one to fill this place with call and calm. This was the promised land, and it still is exactly what it was before. Pillar before me, speak. Its tendril snakes its way through skin. My throat, an open tendril, turns blue across red. The taste. 6.211. In life, it is never a mathematical proposition which we need, but we use mathematical propositions only in order to infer from propositions which do not belong to mathematics to others which equally do not belong to mathematics. Tanishmak, to meet. Of iron set in stone. So we must, from the hawk's far-stemming view, sit in the shade and drink tea from tulips. This curve sings next to the Metro bus station. That border carries the crowd shifting through traffic's obedient madness, crossing the gravity that counteracts the weight of gravity, pulling back against the water. Look at the bridge. Tell me you can see the same thing, different as it must be. Remember the occasion, then wander off into winding streets, our ripe fields revolving through their harvests in sweet torment. So many are something else entirely, the amount of blood we lose. 6.4311. Death is not an event of life. Death is not lived through. If by eternity is understood not endless temporal duration, but timelessness, then he lives eternally, who lives in the present. Our life is endless in the way that our visual field is without limit. Tanıştırmak, to introduce. In death, how it eventually hardens too. My note mimicked Twombly, irresponsibility of gravity. Red loops hanging in the wings, intimate writings too large or condensed or considered, too magnified or diffuse, too red to mean what I viewed. Look through me, dear editor. Consider this accompanying manuscript entitled, Consciousness Cannot Be Separated from Function. To illustrate this point, a hypothetical perfect experiment is proposed, completely isolated from the subject, the experimenter, and science itself. Below are names: apple, street, grass, pigeon, window, train, minaret, book, vine. Whether the apple is red. 6.4312. The temporal immortality of the soul of man, that is to say, its eternal survival also after death, is not only in no way guaranteed, but this assumption in the first place will not do for us what we always tried to make it do. Is a riddle solved by the fact that I survive forever? Is this eternal life not as enigmatic as our present one? The solution of the riddle of life in space and time lies outside space and time. It is not problems of natural science which have to be solved. Tanıştırmak, to introduce, is read with you in your palm, where the call to prayer is the paper dove on the horizon, where the sky can be touched, where it presses down among us, sliver of ghosts piled among ghosts. We are old meat thrown among purple flowers, tomato vines, imprint of feet held up against the sky. We are an indulgent strip of heat across the balcony. This figure I see closed and infinite in nature is the leftovers, the revolutions of our eyes around the pupil, the iris, invisible blood vessels. I passed through the gateway leading out of the mosque's complex. The first words called me across the city. What it is to know these words. Watch it grow the grass, the world that is full of when clouds break. Thank you.